But let us begin with a bizarre story out of Florida. A mother claimed that she was kidnapped, tied up, and held for ransom. But now police believe it was all a scheme. That woman's lawyers are with us exclusively. We'll talk to them in a moment. But first, NBC's Peter Alexander has the details on the story. Peter, good morning.
Matt, good morning to you. Even the sheriff in Florida says this case reads like a novel with allegations of sex, lies, and extortion. A beautiful mother of two claiming she was kidnapped by gunmen and held for days against her will. Her family was rightfully terrified. But now that she's safe, authorities aren't buying her story. They are portraits of what appears to be the all-American family. Quinn Gray, her husband Reed, and their two young daughters. A couple married for 10 years. Attractive, wealthy, and seemingly carefree. But this past Labor Day weekend, an improbable twist. Quinn disappeared from the couple's multi-million-dollar beachfront home near Jacksonville, Florida. The 37-year-old housewife later told authorities she was kidnapped at gunpoint and tied up, describing a hellish 4 days of forced captivity and sexual assault. NBC News has obtained a copy of this ransom note that Quinn Gray told investigators her abductor forced her to write to her husband. "There are 3 men holding me right now, and they want $50,000 cash," she wrote. "Stay at the house," she added. "No cops. Keep your cell phone on you. Keep the kids with you. Please do this, honey, please." But St. Johns County Sheriff David Shore says it was all a hoax.
It became more and more evident, really to everybody involved, that it was something far more complex and involved than a kidnapping.
The sheriff says Gray wasn't a victim at all.
Quinn Gray was not kidnapped, and we stand by that, and she'll have her day in court.
Gray was arrested last month for trying to extort $50,000 from her husband, a successful business owner who makes upwards of $70,000 a month.
If I wanted $50,000, all I would do is take it out of the bank account.
Also arrested, this man, 25-year-old Bosnian immigrant Jasmine Osmanovic, now jailed on extortion charges. Authorities say Gray and Osmanovic had prepared their scheme for weeks. In more than 100 pages of recently released court documents, investigators say Gray and Osmanovic stayed at several locations, including this Jacksonville motel, where the manager says they looked like boyfriend and girlfriend.
I looked straight at her. I said, "Hey," nodded my head. She said, "Hey." Didn't seem like she was in distress at all.
Reed Gray acknowledges in court papers that the couple's marriage became rocky in 2007. Both partners admit having affairs, but they've since reconciled. While he's stunned by the allegations, Reed Gray is standing behind his wife and paying for her defense.
I want her to feel great about everything after this is all over, and I think that's going to be the outcome.
Quinn Gray's lawyers say she was suffering from an untreated, undiagnosed manic phase of bipolar disorder, and that in her poor mental state, she believed Osmanovic's story that her husband owed Osmanovic $50,000. Gray's lawyers say Osmanovic's claims, including that he and Gray had an ongoing romantic relationship, are completely false.
Did you have a sexual relationship with Osmanovic? No, I did not. I did not know him.
In his affidavit, Osmanovic claims he first met Gray at her home somewhere around the end of June. Gray's lawyers say that's not possible, because at the time, she was in alcohol rehab in Minnesota.
What do you want to say to your family? Do you have an apology to your family? I love you, and I hope to see you soon.
For now, Quinn Gray is at a mental health facility in Georgia. That's a condition of her release from jail. Both Osmanovic's lawyer and one of Gray's lawyers will be in court today, Matt, for a pretrial hearing.
All right, Peter Alexander. Peter, thank you very much. Mark Miller and Rick Jansha are two of Quinn Gray's attorneys. They're with us exclusively this morning. Gentlemen, nice to have you here. The prosecution's version of this story and Quinn Gray's version of this story couldn't be more different. Basically, the prosecution says there was no kidnapping. She was not involved in this other than that she was having a romantic and sexual relationship with this man. The guy at the hotel says she didn't seem to be under duress, and there were chances for her to escape. Several occasions she could have taken off. How do you explain that?
Well, I think it's important to note now, Matt, that the prosecution and the sheriff don't necessarily share the same opinion about what happened that weekend. But the bottom line is Quinn Gray, on Labor Day weekend of this year, was kidnapped during the midst of a manic phase of her bipolar disorder. Her reaction to the kidnapping, it may seem bizarre, but it's all explained by her mental illness.
Does it also explain another piece of evidence that could be, something could have become an important piece of evidence? There's an audio tape. And that audio tape apparently has a recording of sexual relations between these two people, Mr. Osmanovic and Quinn. followed by what seems to be a rehearsal, a discussion of how they're going to cover this all up and explain this. Can you tell me about that tape?
Well, actually, the tape doesn't disclose what law enforcement claims
I have not heard the tape. I want to make sure people know that.
And again, it's currently being held as evidence because, as Mark indicated, the state attorney's office doesn't necessarily hold the same opinion or conclusions as the sheriff. According to the state attorney's office, the matter is still under investigation. They're still unsure, we submit at this point, whether or not Quinn Gray is actually the victim of an abduction and rape.
Are you going to fight to stop that tape from being admitted as evidence?
Absolutely, absolutely. We believe that tape is an audio recording of a woman who's been kidnapped, abducted, and being raped.
So you'd use the rape shield law as a way to get that stricken from evidence?
Absolutely.
Let me make sure our viewers understand that. Is it Quinn Gray's assertion that she never met this man before or simply had no relationship, romantic or sexual, with him prior to this weekend?
Quinn Gray had no relationship with this Bosnian Osmanovic prior to Labor Day weekend. He came by on 2 occasions prior to that weekend under the guise of misdelivering a package, and then he came back a few days later.
So he was at their house on 2 occasions.
He brought a package, and then a few days later came back saying it was a package that was misdelivered. That's how we believe he targeted her.
So you think that he was casing the place or targeting her, and I would imagine the prosecution might say that's a way to cover 2 prior visits to her house by this man.
But what's more telling is on the second visit, when he came back to retrieve this package, Quinn actually called Reed and said, "You remember that package that was misdelivered? The person's here to pick it up. Where did you put it?" So
this undiagnosed mental illness, bipolar condition, is there a history of mental illness in Quinn Gray's family on her side?
There is an extensive amount of history, and that's one of the reasons that it was untreated and undiagnosed. Quinn has grown up with a stigma against recognizing what she was going through. She self-medicated for much of her adult life with alcohol. That led to an alcohol abuse problem. In the middle of this summer, she went to Hazleton, a facility, and was treated for her alcoholism. When she came back in middle of July, the next 6 weeks she was untreated, undiagnosed, and she was no longer self-medicating. She was in a manic phase of her bipolar disorder when she was kidnapped on Labor Day Friday.
Let me read a quick statement from Quinn's husband, Reed. "This has been an extraordinarily traumatic experience for me and my entire family. I'm deeply concerned over how this incident has and will continue to affect our children. I love my family and will do whatever I can to make sure that Quinn receives all of the help and support that she needs." He is funding her defense, correct?
He has been behind her rock solid 100% from the beginning, yes.
And she is right now in a psychiatric facility. How is she doing?
She's doing rather well. Of course, she's very anxious about what's going on. She's in the middle of her treatment, and she thought it was very important that we disclose and discuss, the problems that she's had and what she's been going through, so that other people that have these type of issues or disabilities, it may be recognized. What's telling is Quinn Gray may not have reacted the way you or I would react, or someone else would have reacted, but she's alive today. And so, however she did react, it was the appropriate thing she did at the time.
Lots of twists and turns and more to come in this.
It is stunning that the sheriff is coming out and saying that he still believes it's a kidnapping. From the day Quinn was abducted and released, Reed Gray has been asking, and they've been promising, we'll show you they knew each other before September 4th, 2009. 8 weeks have passed. Not one email, not one text message, not one cell phone record. They've done the computer searches. There is nothing that supports their contention that it's a faked kidnapping.
Guys, thank you for being here. We're going to follow this story closely.
All right, thank you for having us.